Welcome to the Opal Foundations series. In this 6-chapter episode, Reframing Personalization, we sat down with Gabe Alonso, dynamic storyteller and marketing thought leader.
So Gabe, let's go back to our topic. Let's go back to the reason that we're having this conversation today, reframing personalization. We've gone through the journey and a lot of the elements that it takes to do it. But what exactly needs reframing? What are we talking about here?
Sure. So I think what I would want people to take away from this is that personalization isn't the strategy, right? It should be something, at least in my eyes, that gets brought in after you've done all this great work. It's the destination, right? It's the cherry on top to the overall kind of consumer experience with your brand, right? As an example, I had a front row seat to a situation where a company went from a highly curated, kind of targeted comm strategy to almost solely being driven by machine learning.
Okay.
And the feedback we got quickly from the consumers was that the messages felt stale at times. They suddenly weren't as relevant, and they didn't understand why they were getting certain messages.
So the consumers all of a sudden had this awareness that you guys were doing things.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which, frankly, if you're doing personalization, it should not feel like that at all. It should feel incredibly seamless, right? And natural. And so what we eventually had to do was put a bit of an editorial and targeting strategy on top of the machine learning. And while, maybe that ultimately would have become our best practice, in the short term, it created more work than we were doing before. So if personalization is meant to be, technology that's supposed to streamline things and make communications easier and drive the business and all of this stuff, and suddenly now it is, making teams work through the nights and on the weekends to be able to keep up with the amount of content that needs to power that engine, we had to ask ourselves if it was worth it. And I think marketers need to ask themselves if it's worth it. And I think for me, that's also why I want to put a different approach to personalization. You don't need to go so hard in the paint to be personalized.
Right.
And I think everything we've talked about allows you to develop that relationship in a way that when you put personalization, it like turns that moment with your consumer into like, oh my gosh, they know me, right? And it strengthens the relationship that you ultimately have over time. Like, it takes away the reliance on only your products and services, right? Think of everything that's happened now in COVID. A brand like Nike could go away from their products and services and just focus on the people who got them to where they are today, their athletes and their consumers, right? Why? Because they understand and they've built that understanding of what their consumers are going through. And because of that, they've been able to develop an empathetic relationship and strong ties to their communities. And suddenly it's not about shoes and dry fit shirts. It's about what we're all going through in terms of staying home.
Right.
And that might not feel like personalization, but there is so much work that happened before that it allowed them to provide this experience that while it's we want it to be one-to-one, it's really one-to-many, but it's so good because it's so true to what I'm going through as a consumer that it feels one-to-one, right?
Right. Well, and I think what you're saying is it's the balance, right?
Correct.
You said a second ago, like going too hard in the paint. And I think, anything in excess is bad, right? Moderation. And so what you're saying is people need to ensure that we're balancing, the advantages that technology affords us, because we agree, right? There is advantages within personalization,
Correct.
But on the other end, it's keeping the human element into it so that it feels authentic and like you said a second ago, the awareness is not there, right?
100%. 100%. And I think also to understand that you can't just jump right into personalization. That you need to have the bones of a strong content strategy, and consumer journey so that you understand where personalization can best be inserted, and then learn from that and understand how to scale it appropriately, right? So again, moderation.
Okay. Let me throw you a curve question here.
Okay.
How do you see the evolution of personalization from here out far into the future, right? I mean, do you think machines are going to get smarter, or would you stand by this, if I talk to you in 10 years, is your opinion now that it would be the same fundamental practice of balance?
I mean, in my heart of hearts, as a true, marketer, I hope there's still the balance of that art and science. But I mean, interestingly enough, I was talking to my father about this, about these conversations that we've been having, and he's a computer scientist by trade. And, he's like, yeah, personalization is the way it gets better is the machine starts to learn you so well that you don't even realize the machine is interacting with you in the first place, right? And I think in time we'll probably get to that. However, I do think there will still be that special sauce that the human touch can provide that a machine, at least in the way we're using them now, just can't do. And that is in the, it's in the softer sides of what we do, the ways that we create those empathetic pieces of content, the way we show that we are you, that, the brand is also living through a pandemic and all that stuff, right? That said, games and everything are getting crazier and crazier in terms of their, AI and VR capabilities. It wouldn't surprise me that at some point there will be some, crazy AI that is the equivalent of every single top brand marketer brain ever.
Right.
And, and, they'll be able to create these incredibly soft touch premium experiences that just feels like they're tugging at your heartstrings all the time. I'm not putting that, I'm not kind of throwing that out, but I'd like to think that there will still be a human element no matter what.
Okay, good. But in the meantime, we're going to advocate for the balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because
Okay.
I still need a job, Jake. I still need a job.
You got it. All right. Well, I can't imagine it's going to be hard for you to keep that. So, all right, Gabe, this is great. This is an awesome conversation about reframing personalization. And I think when I'm going to go back and listen to this conversation again and really realize that, you bring up so many great points about the balance. And I think, if there's any takeaway, it's got to be that. You've got to depend on, to be able to scale, you've got to depend on some of that technological advances that we've been blessed with and we've created as humanity, but you can't live on that. You've got to bring that human element in, because that's where it wins. So Awesome. Great conversation. Before we let you go, Gabe, we've got 3 questions I'd love to get your take on. Just give me whatever comes to your mind first. Okay.
Cool.
Just to get to know a little bit more about what makes you tick.
All right.
Let's start. What drives you daily?
I mean, not that I'm doing this because we're in a biased situation, but I love this. I love having these kinds of conversations. And so that's why I'm, frankly, I'm excited to be in this new role that I'm in at Pepsi, because I feel like I'm coming into a new piece of the portfolio that needs to have these conversations on a daily basis. Why are we doing this? Who are we talking to? What's the best way to talk to them? Let's be creative. What's hot out there right now? And so those kinds of conversations of digging into culture and the why of it all, I just could do it all day.
Awesome. Great. What's your marketing superpower?
So I remember saying this a long time ago in like a panel I did back when I was working at an agency. And I think it's the power of method acting. And so I say that because I feel like when you're in the content creation space, you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of whomever you're talking to. And so at the time I was talking about this when I was working on craft and putting myself in the shoes of 40-something-year-old suburban moms creating recipes for their kids. But I do feel like I've been able to do that well throughout my career. And it's why hopefully I've been able to create good content, write good, editorial blog pieces and all that stuff, because I feel like I have an innate understanding of what people need.
Great answer. And finally, Gabe, what would you say is on the horizon for you? What are you looking forward to, and what's next?
Totally. So like with this new role, I'm going to have an opportunity to build a team, roll my sleeves up and get dirty, get back into the content creation, the method acting that I love to do so much.
Get in the mud.
Yeah, get in the mud, man. It's weird, but like I truly missed being in the trenches. And so for me is digging or diving back into that, kind of refreshing my brain of all the great stuff that's been happening across the social platforms, and now being able to actually create a digital practice, right? So how social and .com and a CRM program and all those things work together to create a really compelling, immersive, and hopefully engaging brand across digital. Like I'm just over the moon. So I can't wait. I've 3 weeks in now, and I love it. So onwards and upwards.
Good for you. That's fantastic. Gabe, this has been awesome. What a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your time and your insights with us on the Opal Foundation series. I think reframing personalization is a topic that a lot of people are going to be really interested in learning more, and we're probably going to have a follow-up conversation about it. So I'll look forward to that.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure, Jake.
Absolutely, Gabe. Thanks so much. We'll see you again.
Thank you for watching this chapter from the Opal Foundation series, Episode 2, Reframing Personalization. For more inspiring stories, please subscribe to the Opal blog.